Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. It's really great to be here. My name is Dan Kern. A little bit about me. I'm a bit of a tech junkie. She mentioned about fly fishing, catch, and release. That's probably the thing I enjoy the most. But I do spend a lot of time studying offense in order to help improve defense, as a lot of you guys do. So when they invited me to come here, the first thing I thought of was, yeah, science, right? I mean, you guys live in the science world. And then I thought, wait a second. I mean, you guys are probably dealing with advanced attacks against nation states on a daily basis. And I'm thinking, whoa, there's some pretty serious minds in this room and some people who know a heck of a lot about security. So what's the first thing that happens in that situation? Imposter syndrome, right? Well, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? Speaking to these people, I thought, you know what? You guys could teach me a heck of a lot. And just hanging out with you guys, I could learn a tremendous amount about security. But, you know, the reality is that this is Awareness Month. So when you're aware, you realize it's not just half full or half empty, but it's that, right? And like Lee said, the end user is the issue, and that's what we're focusing on. It is a serious problem. So what I want to do today is a few things. Basically, I want to show you some videos, some quick videos, so we're all on the same page, that show some basic attack stuff, so that, you know, stuff you guys have already seen before, I'm sure. Get us all on the same page. Then what I want to do is I want to show you a couple of cool new tools from DerbyCon that were released that you should have in both your offensive toolkit as well as your defensive toolkit. You should be using to test your sensors and test to see if you're seeing this sort of thing. But and then what I'll do is get into my two main points. But basically put, you know, this just came out on Twitter just this week. If you have users on your network, hacks are going to happen. If you don't, you're ultimately going to get Skynet. It is a no-win scenario. So while this isn't going to be the most elegant talk in terms of flow, I will get to my points, I promise you. So let's go ahead and get started. Network exploitation really has matured, and you guys see it all the time. As a matter of fact, I know professional pen testers who haven't used an exploit on an engagement in years. They haven't needed to exploit systems. Why? Because it's too easy to brute force users' passwords. It's too easy to get users to click on links. It's too easy to get to use the user as the way inside the network. And so because it's that way, the attacks that are happening from the outside are radically changing. So this is a video, this is a short clip of some video from a presentation called the Fly Fishing Hack. Now, the important thing to understand about the videos you're going to see, or these clips, are that these are videos that we show to our end users. And you'll see why that's important in just a minute. So in the Fly Fishing Hack here, we all know that we can get a ton of information about somebody from sociallyengineerme.com, right? Easy, piece of cake. Plus Twitter, right? These are the only two social network sites that I use. But you know what? In this particular scenario, they were able to put together a really well-crafted email that was very, very, very hard for me to even resist. And by clicking on that email, of course, we get a shell in the system. And then from there, if the user, and I know your users don't, but if the user is bent on convenience significantly enough that they're running as an administrator on their system, then we know how easy it is to bypass the UAC and obtain full system access in a Windows system. And then from there we can do things like start keyloggers and stuff. Users always freak out when they see this. How easy it is to be able to steal information directly from their systems. And then there's things we all know about pass the hash. Stealing passwords using Mimikatz, and then using that to pass the hash and move laterally to other systems on the network. And then be able to execute things on that network, including spy on a user, see what they're doing, see what information that they're accessing, see that we need to get access to these juicy files on their network shared folder. So what do? We become that user. We migrate into their process. Then we can easily get access to the same network shared drives and the things that they have, and then exfiltrate it to wherever we are in the world, including Belize. So we're on the same page, pretty much standard stuff, right? Everybody's pretty familiar with this stuff. So then came a big change, really not a change, but a morph, in the sense that what has become the tool of choice for attackers now once they get inside of networks, actually even to get inside. Anybody tell me? PowerShell. PowerShell. As a matter of fact, PowerShell is becoming more and more commonly used by attackers as well as pen testers to this day. And the interesting thing is that Microsoft created PowerShell to be this amazing tool that's capable of so much in terms of administration on a network. You can do anything with PowerShell. But as an attacker, if I become you, I can do anything with PowerShell too using your account. So what happens? A lot of defenders are sitting around and they're using PowerShell as a major part of their daily system administrative activities, but yet they're not realizing that PowerShell is also showing up as an attacker. The USS Reliant. We're still running with our shields down. That's because we're one big happy fleet. Ah, Kirk. Yes, you know the scenes. It's one of the best scenes in all of TV. So PowerShell is really becoming the thing. As a matter of fact, so much so that Microsoft at the recent DerbyCon conference came out and said, literally, we know you have a choice of post-exploitation language, so we thank you for hacking with PowerShell. They're not resisting it. You know what, they realize it's a great tool. It's going to be used. Yeah, they're going to try to lock it down and secure it more. Yeah, they're going to try to do things to make our lives as defenders easier, but at the same time, they're not going to dumb this tool down. They realize it is becoming the tool of choice for offense. So, in this particular demo that we did here for end users, we used a USB rubber ducky. We had programmed into it so that we could plug it right into the system, and then immediately it run PowerShell commands. PowerShell obfuscation, doing the standard exec stuff. This is using PowerShell Empire to get inside of the system. We left this up so users could see it, so they could actually see what was going on. Then from there, where we showed them, it's really easy for us then to interact with their system. And we showed them that basically we're able to get some pretty juicy stuff as them. A real user account running PowerShell on fully up-to-date, patched, full enterprise antivirus Windows 10. Pretty straightforward stuff. And then from there, we're able to, again, if the user is running as an administrator, we showed them how easy it is to steal the hashes, not only the regular hashes, but also stuff from the Windows Credential Manager, which can be easily reversed into plain text. So here we are, we've got these credentials, then we're basically going to use this to ask Active Directory anything we want. We're going to laterally move around the network, and in this particular case, we're going to play around with the service desk, interact with this, turn on their webcam, and we're actually able to spy on this individual. Kind of fun stuff, you know. All this using just native PowerShell. So, I want to show you a couple really cool tools that came out at DerbyCon. If you're not familiar with them, most of you probably are because you probably have watched all the videos, but if you haven't, these tools are cool and you should consider them for your use in your offense and your defense. The first one is called Invoke obfuscation. This was released by a guy named Daniel Bohannon, who is from Mandiant. He's one of their top PowerShell minds. This guy is brilliant. And he released this tool realizing that more and more tools, more and more defensive tools are starting to recognize PowerShell commands. You guys are starting to recognize them, write signatures for them and that sort of stuff. But how easy it is to obfuscate PowerShell. So this particular command here, you know, I had this on a system sitting outside of our network. And an internal system, I tried to download this particular one by just being a user click. And what happens? Next Gen Firewall blocks it. Just says, nope, that's PowerShell Empire payload. So this tool that this guy released is very, very cool. We're going to copy our code and we're going to put it inside this tool. And it's called Invoke obfuscation. And we can put our script block. And then what we do with this, once we've got it in, is we're going to encode this as an ASCII string. And all of a sudden we change that code from what you saw to this. We put it on our system outside, do the exact same thing through the next gen firewall, and what happens? Breezes right by. Easy, piece of cake. Brand new shell, no problem. You can do a number of different things with this tool that are very, very cool besides the ASCII obfuscation. You can do concatenation of strings. And what you end up doing here is you end up not only concatenating the entire string, but he was showing us on a single PowerShell string or a single PowerShell command, there's like 5 or 10 different ways you can do the same command by changing everything around. You can do all kinds of crazy things. And then you can obfuscate that using a different form of obfuscation. And then you can obfuscate that. It's kind of like Shitaka Ganai doing it 50 times. And all of a sudden it makes it much easier to get past the next generation firewall. So if you're doing offensive work, check this out. If you guys are defending, check this out. See if your sensors are able to pick up this stuff. Really important. Again, here's the standard PowerShell. And then here's an obfuscated version. The other one is called Invoke Subversive Profile. And Will, who's one of the guys who in charge of the PowerShell Empire project, was talking about this. It's about to be released as part of PowerShell Empire. It's supposed to be released this month. And basically what this does is it takes advantage of PowerShell profiles, okay? When you launch PowerShell, it does the same thing similar to what happens when you launch Bash, right? You launch Bash, it launches a .bash RC. You launch, or a .profile, right? It loads that stuff in here. Well, here's the thing. The contents of these profiles are not part of script logging, which means whatever you put in there is not going to get logged. So what this particular Invoke does is it uses a WMI query to remotely put the payload into the registry on another machine, runs a script that then copies it down to a PowerShell profile and then runs PowerShell. So all you see is PowerShell executed and died. That's all you see. But what happens is that it's run the contents of this, which has given him a shell to your system, and then what happens? It immediately cleans this up and puts the original back. So pretty interesting stuff. New ways, again, of trying to bypass defenses and get inside of a network. You can read more about this at this particular one. Just go to Exploit Monday, Investigating Subversive PowerShell Profiles. So, a lot of stuff here. What's the point, right? Why am I bringing all this stuff up? Well, there's a couple of really important points that I want to make here. The first thing is that the reality is humans are attacking. Okay? As you can see, it's a constant cat and mouse game. New defense comes in, right? One of these guys in the other room creates something new. Wow, I can see this now. What do attackers do? Okay, they know about that too, so they go around it. And then you have to do it again and again and again and again. But what's the common denominator here? The common denominator is there's a human behind that, and the common denominator of what you're doing is you're the human who's defending. You are, and I'm going to mention this, you're probably the most important part of the entire equation. There's an old scenario they talk about, how when you walk inside of a room that you go into all the time, subconsciously you know what's in that room, right? Say it's your house, and you know where everything's supposed to be. And they say that you get to know that so well, and it's so much a part of your subconscious that you're just not paying attention to everything, obviously, every time you walk into that same room. But if you walk into that room and something's different, and you don't even directly notice what it is, there's a part of your subconscious that goes, something's not right here. It's like kind of that feeling of being watched. What does that mean in terms of defense? It means that when attackers are attacking your network, the best tool for defending against that attacks is another human being. So, without coming across and just saying directly, information security analyst, because freaking awesome is not an official job title. Which comes to the most important thing, and this was stated by Sean Metcalf, who's the Microsoft expert in Active Directory. This was stated at DerbyCon. Only you know what's going on inside your environment, and only you know what's normal inside your environment. And you know what's normal, and you can look for what's not normal. Machines can do that to an extent, but exactly like what Lee said, it still requires the interpretation of that. It still requires you to see that this isn't right, because you can't keep up with every little thing that's out there, but what you can know is what's normal behavior, what's right in your house, and something's not right. So he came out and said, you know what? Invest more than your people than you do your tools. Really core critical here. Tools are important. We're not going to send people out without the right tools here. But the reality is that you guys need to know what the latest attacks are. You guys need to know what the bad guys are doing. You guys need to know what's going on in the world and what kind of attacks are coming after you, because that way you know, hey, I know about this, so when you see it, you recognize it immediately. Hey, something's not right here. Something's not good. The other point that I want to make today has to do with security awareness. And Brenda can vouch for this because we talked about this at the SANS Summit. And that is that security awareness is still a valuable defense. What we began doing years ago is we began showing our users how these attacks work. We began showing the users how things work and getting into specific detail with them. And we saw our numbers radically change. And that's some of the clips that you saw earlier is doing that. So I want to talk to you about this briefly and then we're done. Basically getting the user's attention. That's a big deal. Getting the user's attention is hard. But when you sit people down and you show them stuff, it actually causes them to wake up and they look at it a little bit differently. You want to show the users actually how these attacks work. And this isn't something you necessarily have to do. This is just something that I like to encourage people to consider doing. Basically, what we do in these presentations is we target a person inside the organization. With their permission, we pick a real target because real people are important to use. Doing things fake people just don't buy on it, right? So we pick a real user within the organization and we use their social media content against them. We fish them well. Not only do we fish them, we show people how easy it is to socially engineer. We actually teach them how to do it. It's like if you understand how easy it is to socially engineer, all of a sudden it's like your eyes open and you go, wow. And you see yourself as that target as well. It really has made a difference, at least for us. And people recognize it more easily. The other thing that happens is that we really do keep these demos simple. The last thing we want to do is, talk about advanced persistent exploits or advanced malware or, executions in memory and that sort of a thing. We don't go there. As a matter of fact, when I'm showing an attack and I'm actually showing, you're actually seeing real tools in action, I never once really mention the name of any tool because I don't have to. I'm telling a story. I'm telling people a story that interests them, and they're seeing it in action. They're seeing the video camera come on. They're seeing their credit card information getting stolen. They're seeing somebody maybe trying to socially engineer them with a pop-up to get them to put in their smart card. Stuff like that to make things happen. So then from there, we also keep it real. We're using real tools, we're using real techniques, and we tell people, look, this is really the way the bad guys do it. There are no camera tricks here. Okay? It's really important that users understand that. And then from there, we become them and we show them both business and personal impact. If you show them how, like the scene in Morpheus, Matrix, right? That was weird. It's not even Monday. Where Morpheus, where Neo actually goes inside of Agent Smith. And we talk about that concept. It's like the attacker actually becomes you. They become you on the network if you give them access. They're able to move around and do anything that they can do, that you can do, they can do the same thing. They can get access to any of the information you can get access to. And then they can laterally move around inside the network as you and become other people. And we show them not just the business impact, but the personal impact as well. We show them the impact to having their own information stolen. Really, really, really critical stuff. And then we finish it up by not just having it as a hacking demo, but actually arming users as well. Because most users at home don't have the same defenses we have at work. But a lot of the defenses that we have at work are available on a smaller scale for free. We can also teach users like, look, you get an attachment. There are places you can go to look for attachments. There are places you can go to look at, to see what the reputation of a website is. There are tools that you can use to make sure your system at home is completely up to date, that sort of a thing, as well as enable two-factor authentication to make your passwords and memory useless to an attacker. When you start showing users stuff like that, the light comes on. They realize, wow, so this is what you guys do. And then they realize that it's important. And oftentimes they just embrace it initially themselves in terms of their own personal impact. But then they also start to realize that there's not a whole lot of difference between work and home. It's kind of a blur nowadays in terms of what's available. So that's one of the reasons why I bring this up, is because we are talking about humans. We are talking about you as humans defending and them as humans defending us too. And the more you understand about the current and modern attacks, the better equipped you are, the more they understand. basically the fundamentals of what's going on and how easy it is to do. They realize that it's not just all hocus pocus, folks, that it really is real. There are 3 versions of the most recent ones. The fly fishing hack that cost millions, Cyber Wars, and the current one that we're doing now, Help My Fridge Has Been Held for Ransom. These are available on YouTube. They do include the most current hacking demos in here. And so if you're interested in checking them out, sharing them with your friends, take them, hack them up, do whatever you want to do with them. But this is another tool, again, for end users. So really, we've talked about really the most important 2 things is not only to arm your end user, to make sure you're armed with knowledge. Make sure you're armed with the latest stuff, because you are defending against other humans, and the machines really are just the tools that are being used. And if you know what's going on in your environment and know it well, you're going to be a better defender.